The Okavango River is a river in southwest Africa. It is known by this name in Botswana, and as Kubango in Angola, and Kavango in Namibia. It is the fourth longest river system in southern Africa, running southeastward for 1,600 kilometers 1,000 miles. It begins at an elevation of 1,300 meters, 4,300 feet, in the sandy highlands of Angola. Farther south, it forms part of the border between Angola and Namibia, and then flows into Botswana. The Okavango does not have an outlet to the sea. Instead, it discharges into the Okavango Delta or Okavango alluvial fan, in an endorheic basin in the Kalahari Desert. The Quito River is a major tributary. The Kubango and Quito rivers are the principal tributaries of the Okavango Delta, and affect its health. In Angola, the upper reaches of the Quito suffers clogging due to controlled burns of the vegetation, reducing water flow downstream as the accumulated water instead flows into the sand. Before it enters Botswana, the river drops 4 meters 13 feet in a series of rapids known as Popa Falls, visible when the river is low, as during the dry season. In the rainy season, an outflow to the Boteti River in turn seasonally discharges to the Makadikadai Pans, which features an expansive area of rainy season wetland where tens of thousands of flamingos congregate each summer. Part of the river's flow fills Lake Ngamai. Noted for its wildlife, the Okavango area contains Botswana's Mormi Game Reserve. Every wet season, Angola receives 3 times more rainfall than Botswana, discharging a higher than usual flow into the Okavango, turning swathes of outlying desert into a huge wetland. Although the summer rains fall in Angola in January, they take a whole month to travel the first 1,000 kilometers of the Okavango River, and then they take a further 4 months to filter through the plants and numerous channels of the final 250 kilometers of the delta. As a result, the flood is at its biggest sometime between June and August, during Botswana's dry winter months. The delta then swells to 3 times its permanent size, attracting animals from kilometers around and creating one of Africa's greatest concentrations of wildlife. At its widest point in a big flood year, the seasonal swamp stretches to 150 kilometers across from east to west. One of the factors that leads to the ever-changing nature of the delta is the flatness of the area. If one were to take a cross-section of the delta at its widest point, one would find that the height variation from the mean over that 150 kilometers is less than 2 m, which means that a minor sand deposition can cause major changes. In very wet years, a part of the river's flow may extend along the Magwegana River, actually a northeastern distributary of the Okavango Delta, and enter the Zambezi River, bypassing the Kalahari. Sediment transport. The river carries annually 28,000 tons of suspended sediment and a similar amount of bedload to the terminal swamps. Most of the particulate sediment carried by the river is fine sand, with some silt and mud, thanks to the geological makeup of the Okavango River catchment, which is largely underlain by Kalahari sand. There is low concentration of dissolved solids in the river water, around 40 mg/L, made up mostly of silica, calcium, and magnesium bicarbonates, but these dissolved solids form the largest component of sediment carried into the delta because the annual water volume is so large. During colder periods in Earth's history, a part of the Kalahari was a massive lake, known as Lake Makadikadai. In this time, the Okavango would have been one of its largest tributaries. Both Namibia and Botswana experienced drought, and as a result, concerns have been expressed about possible conflict over use of the river's water. Namibia has built a water canal, measuring about 300 kilometers long, and has proposed a project to build a 250 kilometers pipeline to divert water from the river into Namibia to help relieve the drought. Botswana, however, uses the Okavango Delta for both tourism income and a water source. The Department of Water Affairs in Botswana has submitted that 97% of the water in the river is lost through evaporation, so the country cannot afford to lose any extra water. Namibia, in turn, has argued that it will only divert half of 1% of the river's flow, and that it is entitled to any water that flows through its territory. To deal with such issues, in September 1994, Angola, Namibia, and Botswana signed an agreement to form the permanent Okavango River Basin Water Commission, to provide advice to the three countries about the best ways to share the Okavango River's resources. Recon Africa, a petroleum exploration company headquartered in Canada, has obtained exploration licenses for more than 13,600 square miles of land in the Kavango region of Namibia and in Botswana. In January 2021, Recon Africa announced the start of drilling operations on the first exploration well. Environmental activists have expressed concern that Recon Africa's plans for its test wells have not been properly vetted through Namibia's environmental review process. However, Recon Africa and both the governments of Namibia and Botswana have stated that the company's activities have followed due process and that no fracking will occur. Recon Africa's drilling area is in the Kavango West region, which contains a multi-country conservation park, 6 locally managed wildlife reserves, and 1 UNESCO World Heritage Site. However, the drilling license does not include any of these protected areas. The water of the Okavango Delta begins in the highlands of Angola. It flows down channels and rivers and seeps through peatlands along the Angola-Namibia border and into northern Botswana, where it fans out into one of the world's most iconic and distinctive inland deltas. The Kavango, Okavango River flows from the highlands of Angola through Namibia and into Botswana, where it forms the Okavango Delta. The basin consists of the areas drained by the Kavango, Kutato, Kuchi, Kuvele, Kube, Kuyo, Kuatir, Luisinga, Longa, Quiriri, and Quito rivers in Angola, the Kavango River in Namibia and the Okavango Delta in Botswana. The river plays an important role not only in the lives of local populations residing along the river, but also at national level. Water-based tourism is the second largest foreign currency earner for Botswana, and most tourism activities are centered on the Delta system, which forms part of the larger Okavango River system. The river sustains over 500,000 people who use the plant and animal resources found in the river to support livelihoods. For Namibia, the Kavango River, as it is known in that region, drains along the town of Rundu and provides support to riparian communities' livelihoods through a diverse set of ecosystem goods and services. The Okavango Delta has rich biological diversity and is internationally recognized as a site of ecological importance. It has, as a result, been declared a Ramsar site, a wetland of international importance. Okavango River, fourth longest river system in southern Africa, running basically southeastward for 1,000 miles, 1,600 kilometers, from central Angola, where it is known as the Kavango, to the Kalahari Desert, in northern Botswana, where the river terminates in an immense inland delta known as the Okavango Swamp. The river, formerly sometimes called the Okavango, takes its name from the Okavango, Kavango, people of northern Namibia. David Livingstone, the Scottish missionary and explorer, and the first European known to have seen the Okavango, reached its swampy delta in 1849. The Okavango River rises as the Kavango just south of Vila Nova, Angola, on the B Plateau, at an elevation of 5,840 feet, 1,780 meters. It flows south and then southeastward through Angola in a course that is initially broken by rapids. Along its middle course, the Okavango forms part of the Angola-Namibia border. After being joined by its largest tributary, the Quito River, the Okavango River then crosses Namibia's narrow Caprivi Strip to enter Botswana. Soon after entering Botswana, the Okavango begins to widen as it enters the flat, swampy tract in which it terminates. About 70 miles inside Botswana, the river spreads out to form a triangular-shaped delta, the base of which extends for about 150 miles, 240 kilometers. This delta region, less than half of which is swamp year-round, covers an area of about 6,500 square miles, 16,800 square km. Most of the delta's area is inundated during the rainy season. The river is subject to drastic changes in flow along its length because of seasonal variations, the reception of tributaries, evaporation, and absorption into the riverbed. In its uppermost course, the Okavango flows through woodland country that becomes less densely forested as the river progresses southward. Further to the southeast, the river passes through areas occupied by dry savanna, i.e., grassland with scattered acacia trees. In the Okavango swamp itself, the vegetation falls into two main types: dense clumps of papyrus reeds and other aquatic plants in the river and floodplain channels, and patches of woodland and savanna occupying the slightly higher parts of the delta. In the delta, the dense growth of papyrus reeds is continually blocking the river's channels, thus changing the pattern of flow. Although the Okavango brings water to a parched land, the river's resources remain largely unused, and its banks are only sparsely settled. Except for small craft, the Okavango is virtually unavigable. A major problem for the Tswana, Batswana, people, the main inhabitants of the Okavango Delta, has been control of the tsetse fly. The Mormi Wildlife Reserve covers 1,463 sq miles, 3,788 square kilometers, of the northeastern corner of the Okavango Swamp. Its teeming wildlife includes lions, cheetahs, buffalo, wildebeests, hippopotamuses, zebras, wild dogs, crocodiles, and other species. Birds include storks, ibis, herons, egrets, cranes, and weaver birds. There are also numbers of ducks, geese, and quail. Varieties of fish include bream, pike, barbels, and tigerfish. Thank you for watching this video.